Hello my friends and welcome back to another video. Today we are talking about the worst books I read in 2024. It's that time of year again where I talk about the books that I just did not like, did not get along with, couldn't finish, or just straight up hated. Before we get into the list though, let me make a disclaimer as I do in every one of these videos. If you loved these books and I am talking about how much I hated them, please don't get upset. Reading is subjective. I can hate the books that you love and you can hate the books I love. That's how reading works. We won't all have the same opinions. I am not trying to say that you're a terrible, awful person. I'm just saying they did not work for me and I didn't have a good time while reading them. These are all just my thoughts and opinions. If you don't agree, that is okay. I know that's a disclaimer that you hear probably constantly on these videos, but sometimes people need to hear it again and again because I know that these videos, they can stir up some emotions for people. So, you know, it doesn't feel good to hear your favorite book be talked about negatively, but this is all just for fun. It's not meant to hurt any feelings. These are just my thoughts and opinions, and honestly 2024 was not a great reading year for me, so there were quite a few books that I just didn't have a good time while reading. So I think I have maybe 10. I actually don't know, I didn't count. I am including 3 DNFs in this list, but I'm only including the books that really stuck out in my mind and that I'm just really glad that I didn't finish. And then the rest will be books that I finished and rated either a 2.5 or a 2-star. I do have one book that was a 3-star, but I bumped it down after thinking about it for a while. But other than that, most books are a 2-star or 2.5 for me. Let's start with the DNFs. First up, we have The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. I only made it 20-some pages into this book. I really did not make it far, maybe 30, and had to promptly DNF. I don't know what it was about this book. I think it was the writing, but the writing made the main character feel so insufferable that reading anything from her perspective and like listening to her made me want to cry, like in a frustrated way. Like I just wanted to be like, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. I knew I could not read the entire book from this character's perspective and have to like listen to them and just like hear them talk. Like I was just so frustrated, and I was really excited for this book too because it kind of has like a Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory vibe, except with an author. So I thought it was going to be really up my alley. I thought it was going to be a fun, cozy kind of book, but the main character ruined it so badly for me. There was no way I was going to finish this. So unfortunately, this does stand out because I really didn't like it. Probably the saddest DNF that I made this year was One of Us Knows by Alyssa Cole. I really enjoyed When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. I thought it was such a unique horror book. I loved the vibes, I loved the characters, I loved the plot, and I was really looking forward to this thriller. It has the main character who has DID, and the way the book is done is very unique, and it's very refreshing to see DID done in a thriller this way. So I have to give Alyssa Cole props for that. I think this book will work for some people, but for whatever reason, when I was reading it, I was getting so frustrated. The writing, and it's not necessarily that the writing was bad, it's just there's a lot of flip-flopping because there are multiple alters that you do get to read from their perspective, and it was just hard for my brain to keep switching like that. For whatever reason, when I was reading it, I was just like, this is so irritating. And I was kind of confused where the plot was going. It felt really weird, but not in like a good weird. So I was like, I cannot keep doing it with this book. I am going to have to put it down. I'm going to have to step away, and I'm going to have to just not continue it. I was so upset. I really wanted to love this, and unfortunately it just didn't work for me. This next one is a very popular book, a very popular author. I'm sure this will be on a lot of people's best of 2024 lists, so I'm sure I'm in the minority with this one, but I DNF'd I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. This is my 4th attempt at a Stephen Graham Jones book. I knew going into this book I don't love his writing style. It's very stream of consciousness. It's just hard for my brain to process. It's hard for my brain to click with, and I get confused, I guess is the best way I can say it. Sometimes his plots are also a little confusing, so the writing mixed with the plot just makes me even more confused. And I knew that going into this, that this probably wasn't going to work for me, but I wanted to give it one last chance. I made it 70% into this book, but I just couldn't do it anymore. I was like, this is so hard for me to read. I was not enjoying my time. I was just waiting for it to end. I didn't really care about the story. I didn't care about the characters. And I just think that Stephen Graham Jones has really good plots on paper. Like when I read them, they're really interesting, and I get major FOMO when people talk about his stuff. But when I go to read it, it's just not what I want, and so it never really works. I have learned my lesson. Unfortunately, this will be the last time I attempt a Stephen Graham Jones book, which is heartbreaking. I know he's very beloved. I know everyone really adores him, but his writing is just not for my brain, so this one made it onto my worst of list, sadly. Okay, let's talk about another book that is probably going to be very controversial. I'm sure this book is going to be on many people's best of 2024 lists. I'm sure that this is a very unpopular opinion. I don't know many people that agree with me on this book, but probably the worst book I read this year, this is probably my #1 worst book, is We Used to Live Here by Marcus Clywert. I know, it really took the horror community by storm. People were devouring this book. People are talking about how creepy and scary this book is. Sadly, I do not share those opinions with my fellow book readers. Pretty much hated this book as soon as it got started. I realized it was not going to be what I had anticipated it being, and it was going to be one of those books that I'm just not the target audience for. I did know that once I got, you know, a good chunk into it, but I had an arc of this one, so I really did want to give it a fair shot. I don't love DNFing arcs that much. I like to give it, you know, the best shot I can, so I did continue hoping that it would get better for me. Whoa, I was wrong. My biggest pet peeve with this book is that it's marketed as a home invasion, which I think is extremely misleading in my opinion. I don't think this should be classified as a home invasion horror. It also compares itself to the movie Parasite, which I absolutely love, but I think that is also very misleading. I don't think it has anything really in common. I can kind of see the glimmer of comparison that they were trying to give, but in my opinion, I don't think it's accurate at all. I think if you like books similar to House of Leaves, which I also did not like, which is again probably why I didn't like this one, and you kind of like those ambiguous books where you're not going to get a lot of information because the ending really does not tell you a single thing. So if you like those ambiguous House of Leaves kind of books, I think you'll probably absolutely love this. For me, they just don't work for me. I don't find them scary. I find them really boring, honestly. I found House of Leaves boring. I found this one boring. I didn't expect to be scared, but I think the overall story was just really not anything I care about or find interesting or enjoy. And I really hated every single second of the book. Literally every single second. I wish I had DNF'd. Someone in the Attic by Andrea Mara. Oh my god. Let's talk about a thriller that made me have a headache. This is also labeled a home invasion thriller, and you know, the theme I'm seeing is that things labeled home invasion are really not as home invasion as they are supposed to be. This just had the stupidest twist I've ever seen. It was very predictable. I didn't think it was anything jaw-dropping or shocking. It's really focused on 17 different plot points. Like, I feel like you're following so many different stories that feel very unnecessary to the overall plot. You did not need all this information or to be following all these different, you know, things around. I think it could have been more straightforward. I think if it had leaned into the home invasion more, it would have been more successful. But because it then went into like drama and relationship stuff, I just think it got lost and it became just so over the top and melodramatic, honestly. I had a headache after I finished it. I wish I had DNF'd this. I don't know why I put myself through the torture of finishing it. I should have DNF'd it. It was quick. That's the most positive thing I can say about this book, is it was over quickly. Not quickly enough, but it was over quickly. This next book, the author was on my 2023 worst of list, so I'm seeing a trend with this author. Unfortunately, I don't know if I'm going to give them another chance. Knowing me, I probably will, and then I will regret it. But next up, I am talking about Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. I had the Paul Bearers Club on my worst of list last year, and it was just so pretentious, and honestly I kind of feel the same about Horror Movie. I feel like the ideas and the plot descriptions of his, at least his more recent books, because I have read a Paul Tremblay in the past and loved it, gave it 5 stars. A Head Full of Ghosts was the one that I absolutely loved, so I don't know if his newer books, he's going in like a different direction, I don't know, but like I'm not loving his newer stuff. Horror Movie, you know, I liked the idea, the horror movie aspect. I thought that was fun, but nothing happens. Nothing happens the entire book. Literally, it's so boring because nothing happens. You're reading and reading and reading and waiting and waiting and waiting, and nothing happens until the last like 20 pages of the book, and then the ending has like the most action, and it wasn't even worth it. It just wasn't worth it. I wish I had DNF'd this one too, honestly. I don't know why I continued reading it when I knew I didn't like it, but unfortunately I did, and I wish I had those hours of my life back because it was a waste of my time. Then we have The Cipher by Kathy Koja. I read this book because it was the oldest book on my TBR. I believe I had had it over 4 years. I knew going into it, it probably wasn't going to be for me. It's about, you know, this mysterious hole that this couple finds in a storage room in their apartment building, and they become obsessed with it. The amount of times I heard it referred to as the fun hole was so many, and I was like, I don't care about this dumb hole. Like, I just don't care. I found it to be very boring. You know, like, how many times can I say these books just weren't for me? But it wasn't. It wasn't my kind of horror. It's not a kind of story that I like. I know this is also kind of like very revered and people really love this one. I do understand why. It's weird. It's very bizarre. So if you like that kind of horror, I totally get where you're coming from loving it. But it just felt so dumb that these people were obsessed with a hole. Like, and I don't mean to be mean, but like, if I had been me, I can't see myself doing that. You know what I mean? Like, if I found a mysterious hole, I just would be scared of it, and I would run for the hills, you know? And these people, I don't know, I just couldn't relate to them. I thought they were crazy. I thought they were idiots. I thought the whole thing was just dumb, in my opinion, and I just, like, it... I also wish I hadn't read it and I had DNF'd it. I could say that about every book on this list, you know? I don't know what else to say. It was a very frustrating read. I hated every second of it. Another frustrating read was Tell Me I'm Worthless by Alison Rumfitt. I know that a lot of people love this book. It's very different. It's a unique kind of haunted house story. I love a different take on a haunted house story. I love seeing authors take on that trope and do something different. I think it's really cool and it's very interesting to read, and you know, I like experiencing different kinds of haunted house house stories. This one was very hard to read, and it was mainly because there was a lot of slurs used, a lot of transphobic language used, there was racism involved, and just like how heavy-handed the language was. I understand why authors use certain language at times in their books, but I do think there are points where it becomes overkill, and I feel like I'm being beaten over the head with words to make a point, but I don't need to be beaten over the head to make the point. I can see the point, but it's like they're just trying to like ram it into me, and I feel like that's what this book was doing. And as someone who just, it's very hard to read language like that sometimes, and to have it, I mean, use excessively. Like this was like multiple times per page. It was hard. I didn't want to continue reading. So I skipped a lot of pages. Like I would just see the word, skip it, see the word, skip, see. Those pages were just being used to use those words and use that language. And it felt overall like one of those like edgy horror novels. I don't really like edgy horror. It's something that I just don't gravitate towards. I just kind of like roll my eyes at it. I just don't really get it. It's not my kind of horror. So I can see what the author was doing. I can appreciate what the author was doing, but I don't think it worked, and I don't think it worked specifically for me. Plus, the ending was really weird. Like, it went in a weird direction, like bizarre, like very strange. I really didn't understand that at all, but you know. Then we have Angel of the Underground by David Andreas. This was a indie horror that I read randomly for a vlog doing books that were recommended for my star sign, which was Pisces. I read it back in March. It was about religion. That was a very big aspect. The main character was a young girl who was a survivor of this home for kids being attacked by this murderer, and the survivors were then placed in different like homes to keep them safe. And she's a girl that was living in a Catholic group home, and now she's moved to this house that doesn't believe in religion, and it was very weird. It was a coming of age story. The reason I didn't like it, besides just not caring about the story, it was like a fine story, but I just don't like when male authors write about young girls experiencing their body for the first time, you know, having sexual experiences, you know, sexual awakenings. I just feel very bizarre when I read it. I don't like it. It makes me feel icky. I don't love it, okay? It rubs me the wrong way. That kind of thing is also a big part of coming of age. You learn about, you know, your body, you learn about who you are, you learn about sex. I understand. I'm saying it just makes me feel weird when it's very detailed and it feels a little graphic. Sometimes it makes me feel really bizarre. I just don't know why it needs to be included like that. So that was one thing. I just didn't really like the writing. It felt very stilted and to the point, but like it didn't flow right. It just felt very like da 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 da. It didn't have like a rhythm or a flow. It just was like, here are words, next, here are more words. And then the ending was just very rushed, and I didn't really care for it. So that one, I really just wasn't my thing. I didn't get it. And lastly is another very, very, very popular horror novel that I'm sure will be on many people's best of lists, and unfortunately I just didn't love it. This is the one where I did originally rate it 3 stars, but I have since demoted it down to a 2.5, and that is Incidents Around the House by Josh Malerman. This one, I think it's because people were really hyping it up, you know, this is the scariest book I've ever read. It kind of had an Other Mother from Coraline feel to it. I liked that it was going to be told from the child's perspective. I thought that was very interesting. I also thought it could be very hit or miss. I wasn't sure, but I wanted to give it a chance. I thought that it could be very scary. You know, there's kind of like a demonic thing happening in the book, which is something that I do enjoy. I I don't know what it was, but the kid calling her dad Daddo drove me up the wall. I have never once heard a kid call their dad Daddo. Daddo? Like, I've never heard that term in my life. And maybe that's like really, really childish to be upset about, but it was just so aggravating. And every time I read Daddo, I was like, ugh. Just like cringing, because I was like, it doesn't sound real, because then the kid doesn't sound like a real kid. They sound fake, because I've never heard that in my life. Someone's gonna comment on this video and be like, actually, I know someone that calls their dad Daddo, and I'll be proven wrong. But never in my 29 years of life have I ever heard a child call their dad Daddo. Okay? Never. The other thing that I absolutely hated about this book is the parents are so stupid. So stupid. They are self-centered, especially the mom. So self-centered, so not paying attention to the real thing that's going on in this book, and it was so aggravating to read. I was like, these people deserve what's going to happen to them because they are so dumb. Like, straight up dumb. Like, I can't even be upset that you're gonna have something bad happen to you because you deserve it now because you're literally stupid. And then the ending was a giant eye roll, in my opinion. I saw it coming from a mile away. I didn't think it was unique. I didn't think it was different. Thought it was very predictable, and I just felt like the whole book was a waste of my time. That sounds so harsh. I'm so sorry. I know I'm being harsh, but I can't stand these books. I really can't. They really frustrate me. I think I was being generous when I gave it 3 stars earlier. Those are the books that I really did not like this year, that really stuck out and kind of stayed in my brain, but not for good reasons, only for bad reasons. Again, this is all for fun. I'm not trying to offend anyone. I'm not trying to offend the authors or any readers who enjoy these books. This is just how I felt. I'm sure there is an audience out there for these books. I'm just not that audience, and they did not work for me personally. So, if you agreed with any of my opinions or you disagreed, I would like to hear either or, because as long as we are being respectful of our opinions, I think it's really fun to share them. Go ahead and leave a comment. Let me know what your worst book of 2024 is, or you can leave me a list if you have more than one. I would love to know. I'm very, very, very nosy, and I like, I like hearing what people liked and didn't like as well. If you enjoyed me talk about these books, I say talk, but it was more like a rant, and you enjoy these kind of worst books lists, go ahead and give me a thumbs up so that I know, and I will keep doing them for you all in the future. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe to my channel. We can become friends, talk about books, horrifying books, thrilling books, romance books, manga, all that good fun stuff. And with that being said, I hope you are having a great day, night, morning, afternoon, wherever you are, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!